meeting that has been held. On that note, let me bring in Major General Rajan, Kochar. Major General Kochar, a lot has been said in this press release, but largely I've tried to summarize the core at this point in time being that India and China now must figure out a way to move past our problems and distrust in the past few years that had developed, particularly after the clashes in Galwan, and move to a situation where both nations as emerging powers can work together. Of course, this is not taking place, Major General Rajan Kochar, in a vacuum. It's very clear that China is pressed by the United States of America, and that's why many countries are now hoping to move away from the US and fostering bilateral relations, better bilateral relations. So keeping that in mind, Major General Rajan Kochar, how do you view some of these steps that are now being taken by China as well? How do we stay cautious but at the same time make the most of this new opportunity that emerges in the current geopolitical scenario vis-a-vis the tariffs and the United States of America?
Thank you, Devika, for inviting me, and my greetings to my co-panelists, esteemed people and knowledgeable on the subject. First is, I think it's a positive sign, and we all have to take it in that manner, because China is a very large economic power. China is a big military power, and we need to recognize that we need to have good relations with our neighbors. And I'm glad that this kind of a dialogue has started, because any kind of a dialogue or a communication, when you have disputes, leads to stability and tranquility on the borders. There are two major issues which need to be tackled here. One is the border issue and other is the trade issue. I am of the opinion that both these have to be taken up together, because there are some exponents who are of the thought that trade can happen without anything happening on the border. It's not possible, because there is a trust, there is a mutual respect, and there is an understanding with each other. I will first talk about the border aspects, being a military man, and how it actually concerns us is we have pressing conflict zones in Depsang Plain, Demchok, Pagongsu area, and Gogra Hot Springs. These are related to our patrolling points where we have been so far denied access to certain areas, touching almost 1,000 to 1,200 square kilometers. We cannot access these areas, and these are disputed areas. There are already existing agreements which suggest that we need to keep on talking to resolve the dispute. Now, what has happened in the last 5 years, I would say, from 2020 to 2025, China has come up with a new set of border laws. And China has tried to legitimize its occupation of these areas. It has even habitat actually come up. More than 100 villages have come up. So all these issues we should carry out in an incremental manner. First is the de-escalation. To some extent, the de-escalation has been done, and especially we have been given access to certain patrolling points. This should be followed by disengagement and finally de-induction. So I think we must do it in a very, very gradual manner. I tend to agree with you when you say that the military talks, and I think the ambassador also alluded to it, the military talks have not been able to make much actually headway. 20 round of core commander level meetings have taken place, but have not resulted. So I feel that this visit of the Prime Minister Modi to China for the SCO meeting should break the ice to some extent. And we must try to convince China to disengage, because de-escalation has been achieved, and I think there is stability. A testimony to that fact is that there have been no border clashes in the last 2.5 years. So I would recommend that a disengagement should be discussed, and it has to be done with a time-bound plan. And it should not be a kind of a generic thing, okay, we will disengage. No, how much and from which area at what point of time should we see this kind of disengagement taking place, because so many buffer zones have been created. So these buffer zones basically have been created to prevent border clashes, but these buffer zones have a connotation. That means that we cannot access these zones, and therefore it is important to have these talks. Almost 1 lakh troops are there, and you can imagine, Devika, you can think for yourself that how much of money is being spent in sustaining such a heavy force in such a high altitude area. So it is to the benefit of China and India, both of them, that this a kind of a disengagement takes place. And my last point is, when we talk about trades and opening of ties, I think that is going to soften up the relationship, because once you start having these flights on, and people to people contact is going to increase, the think tanks are going to go there and their think tanks are going to come here. But we have to tread with caution, because as the ambassador also said, Chinese cannot be trusted. So we should not go actually overboard, thinking that China is now going to become our friend. And what is also important is the Indo-US relations. You can't write them off. Just because of one man in the chair, Trump, and he starts behaving like a monarch, we cannot write. They're too deep-rooted. There are too many strings attached. We have the ISET, we have the Compact, we have the Comcosa, we have the limo. There's so many things happening in technology, in your energy sector, in your defense sector. So I think we should not write an epitaph for the Indo-US relations. They are there to stay. And therefore, whatever actions the government has to take with regard to China has to be in a very, very measured manner. Thank you, Dev.
Right, absolutely. Let me bring in Mr. Vijay Kanti into the conversation as well. Mr. Kanti,